So many of you have been asking about an update on the GameCube collection that I've been working to build up over the past couple of years. I was buying GameCube games pretty consistently, actually, and just doing videos on different pickups I was making to eventually be able to build up like a complete GameCube collection for the most part, maybe minus some like demo discs or some weird releases that they did, like the double packs. But as we've gone along, I've been kind of looking at the market, keeping an eye on it, and I felt like the market itself around retro games, but definitely GameCube games, is getting a bit inflated, and I was kind of waiting for it to come back down a bit. I feel like we're inflating a bubble that will eventually burst, and the pandemic itself seemed to accelerate that as people were staying home and looking for different ways to occupy themselves, and a lot of people turned to gaming, which does include maybe games they remembered from their childhood, and then they start ordering online and the prices go up. But after taking my most recent trip to Too Many Games, which was a blast, and I looked around at what was going on there with some of the in-person sales for these games, I think the market itself is going to continue on this trajectory, which makes me realize, you know what, 20 years later, the GameCube has a major problem. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. So first, let's go over the different pickups that I made, because I did buy GameCube games. I actually bought 7 GameCube games, and then I did buy a system as well. So taking a look at the games, I bought Looney Tunes Back in Action. No real history with this game myself, but the 3D like platforming games or action games were always interesting from this time period, and I didn't have it yet, so I decided to pick that one up. At that booth, it was buy 2, get the 3rd free, so I made basically a pile of games there, 3 different ones. Space Raiders was the other one. This is from the creators of Space Invaders, and it has 2-player simultaneous play, so I figured, hey, let's check that one out. And then Disney's Magical Mirror starring Mickey Mouse, another 3D action platformer. This one does have compatibility with the Game Boy Advance. It does say on the back, want to make the world inside the mirror a little different, use a Nintendo GameCube Game Boy Advance cable to connect your GameCube to a Game Boy Advance that is running Disney's Magical Quest starring Mickey and Minnie. Not really sure what it does exactly there, but I thought it'd be interesting to get another game that is at least compatible with the Game Boy Advance. And once again, I didn't have that one. I picked up one of the compilation discs with the Intellivision Live series. That's over 60 different games. The thing that's kind of cool about this one is it does have classic Intellivision commercials and archive footage. They also have 9 unreleased games and, of course, over 60 Intellivision games. I figure why not? We'll pick that one up. And then I grabbed Evolution Skateboarding. I like the skateboarding games overall, and I've never played this one. It's from Konami, and at the time, obviously, we were all about Tony Hawk Pro Skater, and this one, I guess, just kind of slipped by me. No history with it, like I said, and I guess it'll be interesting to go back and see what the competition was doing alongside of Tony Hawk there at the time. It does mention boss characters that you get to battle, so I guess that could be interesting to see how that turns out. And then the 2 expensive purchases that I made, which, I mean, the GameCube games in general are still pretty expensive all the way around. Like, all the games I was picking up were $15, $20, $30 outside of these next 2, so you had to kind of wheel and deal as best as you could. But the 2 that I got, Resident Evil 3 and Resident Evil 2. These ones were kind of expensive. They were $100 each. And that's about the going rate from what I can tell. And I had to search around a lot at this convention to find these at this price because they were much higher at most booths. And we're going to get into that soon. But Resident Evil 2 and 3 are 2 different games that I wanted to pick up because I am working to complete kind of the Resident Evil games across the board on the GameCube. And I think I need one other one, that being Code Veronica X. And I think that's the most expensive Resident Evil game on the GameCube currently. But I was pretty happy with the condition of both Resident Evil 2 and 3, so I decided to pull the trigger and add those to the collection. As for the system I picked up, I think it'd make for a really fun video at some point, and that is for the NES Top Loader. This one is in really good condition, and it comes with the dog bone controller that, once again, is in very good condition. It even has the Nintendo red logo there that looks pristine. So overall, I was happy to pick this one up. Maybe we'll do a teardown and even try to install an HDMI port inside of it. That'd be kind of funny to see a top loader with that. I mean, that was one of the biggest drawbacks of the top loader, is that they removed the AV video out from the front loading toaster NES, so maybe that's something we could do down the road, but certainly this will find its way into a video. Now, as for the GameCube market itself, as I said, it's continued to go up ever since really the pandemic started and everyone was staying at home. That's when it really seemed to springboard upwards, and it hasn't really come down. It kind of cooled off a little bit here, I guess, slightly in September and October, but ever since the holiday started, once again, it's on its way back up. And I'm kind of thinking it's going to follow this trend because at this time, there's nothing to really stop it from going up. And I say that because we have seen Microsoft do quite a bit when it comes to backwards compatibility, and they're sort of moving on from that. But really, the original Xbox, the games specifically, aren't that rare. They're actually pretty cheap to pick up. The 360 is the same deal. If you look back at Nintendo's history right now when it comes to their games, they're pretty inaccessible. Like, we have recently had more access to these different games with a really popular selling system with the Switch, having access to them through Nintendo Switch Online. But it's stopped now with a fairly limited supply of Nintendo 64 games, and Nintendo hasn't really touched the GameCube library at this time, which has caused pricing to, of course, continue upwards. And it has gotten to a point where it's getting even beyond what I thought it would reach. I mean, when I was at the convention with Too Many Games, there were a lot of sellers selling these GameCube games higher than I was expecting at all, higher than eBay prices. And at conventions, you tend to have some extra pricing at times tacked on for the convention fee of, oh, here it is in front of me. I can just get it. I don't have to worry about shipping or what conditions it's in. But like Cubivore, as an example, at this convention was almost $900 at a couple of booths, whereas on eBay, you can find it for $500, $600, or $700. And the one that was there was at least in pretty good condition. But even across the board, I'm seeing things like Fire Emblem at like $300. I'm seeing things like Skies of Arcadia at $200 plus. It just appeared that everything was more expensive, and it seemed to really be mostly focused on the GameCube. Now, that's not to say that other systems weren't expensive too. It just seemed like the GameCube itself kept coming up as overpriced. A lot of people I talked to at the convention, some on YouTube right now that you may have been watching, were saying the same thing about these different GameCube games. And it just kept coming back to, like, it's a system that I recommend highly to people because I think it was very underrated at the time. And the game library, looking back on it, is very, very good. But it's hard to tell people to pay these prices right now for these different games. I was really excited when Nintendo decided to do their Mario 3D All-Stars collection because they actually did something with the GameCube game and put Mario Sunshine in there and then discontinued it. Fortunately, it's still easy to find at most retailers, but you wonder, okay, for how long? And now we're seeing reports that Sony is going to be pursuing their own legacy subscription service that would include PS1 and PS2 games, which is a system from that same generation as the GameCube. We see Microsoft calling on the industry to lean more into emulation for preservation of these different games, and now I'm kind of looking at Nintendo like, hey, this is a really good system with a really good library of games that I would like people to be able to check out without having to spend 2-3 times the amount as what they're spending on Switch titles now. And at this point, it's up to Nintendo because their biggest thing currently is that they seem to be more fixated on stopping people from being able to get these games as opposed to delivering ways for them to get them. Like we see them go after different ROM sites and stuff, and I get that. Intellectual properties, you're just kind of giving these games away, but it's not like right now Nintendo's exactly working to provide them to people. And I think that's the part that I would like to see Nintendo work on much, much more, specifically when it comes to the GameCube generation. At least they've now moved up to Nintendo 64. However, they don't seem to be pushing a lot of them out the door in a rapid succession. It might even be one every month, every other month now for 64 games, and it makes me think that GameCube is nowhere near being ready or added, or Nintendo's just trying to figure out how to even make that work in the first place, which is a shame because it just hurts people who are trying to figure out how to get into this, and a lot of times they're going to turn to what Nintendo's trying to stop them from doing, which is emulation and just downloading the games. I feel like if Nintendo work towards their own larger subscription service, or just providing these games for sale on the Switch, yes, through emulation, but a way to get them to people, they would probably buy them rather than go out, try to figure out an emulator, and then source the game correctly, and then put it all together with a controller on their PC that might not even be spec'd out to play the game correctly in the first place. It all just leads back to a tough situation for the GameCube now. A system that I would like more people to play, but it's just like one of the most inaccessible systems now based on the way that the market has been trending over the last year and a half or so. It's good for collectors or people who have held on to their games from that generation, but there are a lot of people now who are coming into gaming who maybe started out with the Xbox One, the PS4, or the Wii U, and they're getting a Switch now, and they're looking around at Nintendo's history and realizing that Nintendo doesn't seem very interested in celebrating or even providing ways to get to their history and previous generations. So here's hoping over the next couple of years they're able to do so, specifically with this GameCube generation. But let me know what you guys think about all of this down below, whether it's the pickups that I got at Too Many Games or your thoughts around the GameCube generation and kind of the tough spot it's found itself in 20 years later. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.